in Kenya. Somebody will call me John. Thank you very much. I don't know if you got that. So my name is Olanma John-Agbaje. So most people just say John, or I get emails saying dear sir, because it's easier. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'm sure that we'll have a very good time and we'll learn a lot. So as you earlier mentioned, we have here Collins, Amadi, from my own editor, and then of course we have Kennedy here. So let me start, and I will direct this question to you. So being that in Kenya now, we have the mobile communication being at 80%, how do you think that biometrics is driving financial inclusion while preventing identity fraud?
First, good afternoon everyone. Pleasure to be here. Good afternoon, Olanma. Quite a thought-provoking question. I will address this from a practical standpoint. If there's anyone whose name is Wanjiku, this is a disclaimer. I'm not referring to you. It's just an illustration. Mobile money inclusion, 80% penetration. I will take Wanjiku for instance. Wanjiku runs a small produce store. She receives payment from mobile wallet. She also pays her suppliers through that same channel, basically. All in all our transactions are done through our mobile money accounts. Yeah? And that's just one entity out of millions of transactions that are done daily via that channel. And this creates an element of a potential attack surface on identity. It could either be through a SIM swap fraud, or it could be through a malicious agent who has decided to register a duplicate account through Wanjiku's profile. Now, this is where biometrics changes the equation, whereby financial institutions, even potential customers or existing customers, do not need to rely on having a SIM card. They don't need to rely on having a paper ID. They also don't need to rely on having a PIN, which could either be guessed or be actually gotten through shoulder surfing, basically. With Bio has a tendency to map Wanjiku for who she is. It could either be through her fingerprints or it could be through her facial biometrics. From a technical standpoint, from onboarding, Bio ensures that the capture of somebody's fingerprint or facial biometric maps to trustworthy identity. Yeah? From a transaction standpoint, it could be low-risk transactions, it could be high-risk transactions, and biometric verification tends to be that mitigation to potential SIM swap. From an agent use case, biometric verification also aids to mitigate impersonation, basically. Now, when you look at all these buying, or should I say, added value of biometric, for Wanjiku, basically, it's just very simple. She puts in her fingerprints, or she puts in her finger, she gets verified. For the system, it empowers them basically, because from Bio, it helps to cryptographically map somebody's biological traits into their identity. Yeah? So when you put all these things together, biometric is just an element whereby it scales trust. And with scalable trust, basically, inclusion becomes sustainable. And with a sustainable inclusion, there is that tendency to structurally manage or isolate fraud, per se. And because of this, Wanjiku can easily engage any financial institution to embrace more products, could be loans, could be mortgages, and with that same trust, referrals come in, and you can have more members embrace the financial services.
Thank you very much. I will assume that somebody has put that as an innovative idea, and very soon that will be adopted in Kenya. So thank you so very much. So I want to Kennedy, and this question I find very interesting, being that I'm in an organization that is across regions. So, cross-border payments generally will introduce new identities. So how do you suggest that we standardize protocols across jurisdictions, not just East Africa, but we can also speak about other jurisdictions? I'm actually very interested in your response.
Thank you for the question. I think before I answer the question, I work for Kenya Deposit Insurance Corporation. I know most of you today, you are members of the bank, and our work is to take care of the balance that you have at the bank, so that in case of any eventuality, we secure and we back your money. So our work is a risk minimization, and also we are a solution of the risk. So we are not insuring life, we are insuring your money with the banking system. So why is biometric and single ID very key for us as a people to insure? I'm sure when you talk about biometric and ID, most of you remember the World Bank. Well, maybe you gave your details there. But then for us, our interest is more on cross-border payments, because when a bank goes under in Kenya, or when there is an issue in one bank in Kenya, there is a cross-border effect which may affect other banks in other regions. So there are quite a number of programs and ambitious programs which are currently undertaken by BSC in terms of ensuring that there is an alignment when it comes to digital IDs, and also agreement on the rules that the partners state should follow. So there is a master plan which was launched last year in 2025, I think March, which talks about, it gives a roadmap on the implementation of digital IDs and the expectation. Because what has been happening, most of the countries we normally talk about digital public DPI, digital public infrastructure. But then when it comes to the real implementation and how we ensure that a person in Kenya, if today, I know Kenyans we are very entrepreneurial, if today I'm exporting gold, I'm in Congo, and maybe I have some issues I need to be settled with my bank, but my bank is only domiciled in Kenya. Maybe Family Bank or any other bank which is only based in Kenya. So if I go to any bank in Congo with my digital ID, they should be able to recognize that this is a banker based in Kenya, and they have some accounts which they can identify with, and they are able to give me support. So that is what the framework that East African community is working on. They are given some timelines for 24 months. Within the first 6 months, the issue of setting unified tools, because we realize that yes, we are East Africa, but then we have varied systems, we have varied data protection laws. Some are at an utility level, others are just beginning. So the first 6 months of the master, they were supposed to unify the rules, so that when I speak about common rules, it applies to all East African countries. The next thing was supposed to unify their data protection laws and legislation frameworks. The one thing that this model does not do is to impose for you a system, to say all East African countries use one system. No, they just want you to have your system with common rules, common standards like ISO, I think 301-107, which is about common rules and standardization. There is also, when you look at the regional or continental perspective, there was also a framework by African Union, I think in 2022, which talks about the digital IDs for Africa. So it goes to Africa, but now we are talking about East Africa.
Thank you very much. There was something you said that resonated with me. And I'm going to ask you that question. It's around the Data Protection Act. So based on and I'm directing it to public. So based on role I play, I'm very focused on customer experience. However, we have this, so you now have to balance security. How do we balance these templates without compromising user experience? So I'd like to direct that question to you first, because of that conflict that seems to arise.
Yeah, your concerns are actually very valid. I think for every business person, before I address the question, for every business person, there is always that hustle of security vis-a-vis usability of the product and also customer experience. Maybe I should take one for the team, any security person out there, and also to the business people. If your product gets compromised tomorrow, I'm not sure you have any metric to measure when it comes to user experience, when it comes to usability. Kindly do note that security is actually an enabler to business. We are not sure so fast, basically. So back to the question. There's a complexity around biometrics. Unlike passwords, your biometric data is not revocable. If a password gets compromised or someone's credential gets compromised, they can be reissued another one, basically, and probably have some use cases to just monitor the profile for a while. But for bio, a compromise is a compromise. I can't give Wanjiku another fingerprint. A fingerprint is for life. That being said, when you capture a fingerprint, you're not literally storing the fingerprint image. No. What we do, or what the technology does basically, it generates a biometric template. And this biometric template is just a mathematical representation of key features of that biometric fingerprint message. Now, with this particular template, what do we do around it? It's either we have this template encrypted while at rest, it could be in the server, encrypted while in transit, it could be communication between a third-party integration and a financial institution. Oftentimes, we have it stored in a secured hardware environment. Sometimes we use some complex technology that has this mashed-on device rather than have it centrally managed. So, why is this key for Njiku basically? All Njiku wants is the fact that what she wants to access it is very simple. Yeah? But from a regulatory standpoint, we need to ensure that this biometric template is actually secured. Now, that is where we come in. And we can ensure that there is that very peaceful marriage between security and also usability. There are certain elements we can use. We can use biometric or template tokenization, whereby even if the templates get breached per se, it becomes unusable. Because in these elements where we are, we always assume there will be a breach somehow. The problem is how agile are we, or how do we recover after a breach? So basically, we just assume that there's that tendency for a breach. So what it happens that there's a compromise of Wanjiku's bio data, we have something in place to ensure that it can never be reused. Unlike how you can compromise a password and use it to exploit in an environment. Now, on the mashed-on device, what the mashed-on device does basically is to ensure that authentication for Wanjiku is on a local device. Yeah, but it actually communicates to the backend just to signal that what authentication has been successful. Then there's an element of having risk-based authorization per se. Risk-based authorization is just to have segmentation of transaction type. If Wanjiku is going through a low-risk transaction, only a bio will suffice to authorize that transaction. But if it's a case of a high-risk transaction, we could add another layer of authentication authorization, which could be your one-time password per se. That is after she authenticates via or authorizes via her bio data or her fingerprint per se, and OTP gets triggered and she imputes for that high-risk transaction to go through. So in a nutshell, this is how we can get balance, whereby Wanjiku can easily utilize their fingerprints, easily authenticate to the platform, authorize any transaction. The regulator will be happy that data is being protected because there's encryption of data while in transit or at rest. And also from a security standpoint, there's a proper mitigation, or should I say management of risk. So this is how we can achieve balance percent.
Thank you very much. So Kennedy, as a regulator, this is food for thought. I think you should take this back to your colleagues. Are we ready if we have a systemic failure? So you may not be able to answer that now, but just for you to take that back to your colleagues. So final thoughts. So I think I'll start with you, Kennedy. So if you would recommend or mandate one biometric practice right now in Kenya, just in maybe 1 or 2 words, what would you recommend?
Thank you. Just maybe 1 second. Just to respond to your question, if you are ready on systematic failure in terms of biometrics, I would say you are not fully ready. Because if you look at the East Africa, it's only Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania that are fully mature data protection laws. The rest of the East African countries are struggling. So back to your question. I think if I was to recommend biometric, I would recommend a decentralized one, where because as a bank or as a regulator, you require biometric which can onboard most of the other players without very rigid rules, and also the fact that you can onboard KYC and many other requirements for banks without going through a very complex process.
Thank you very much. So, same question. Yes?
Okay. Again, give me an opportunity to sell security next time. So, currently, biometric means infrastructure. The way we see it basically, it's one easy access for Wanjiku, needed data protection for the regulator, minimized or managed risk from a business standpoint. Previously, we always see identity as a checkpoint, but so far, with the presence of bio, I think we can agree basically it's an enabler to financial inclusion. Why? Because it ensures safe financial dealings. It gives that needed comfort, both from a business standpoint and from a customer standpoint. So basically, as we're embracing identity, let's do as much as we can to ensure that it's biometric.
Thank you so very much. If I will answer that question myself, one mandate I will give is for us to adopt it in our banking halls. So we can do away with paper. People just come in, do their biometrics, and take your cash and you're out. So I'd like to thank you, Kennedy, and also Collins for the time out. And I hope we've taken something back to our organization. Thank you for the time you've given us. All right.
Thank you very much. A big round of applause to them one more time.